Hold on there, folks. Oh, that's a creepy light. Let me see if I can fix that. There we go. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. I have the headphone in place, and actually I think I've got it on backwards, but I am also sitting in my car because there is no power at Potawatomi, and there is no power at the Baker building, and there's no power at the annex. So home sweet home is where it is. Let me adjust that light a little bit. Boy, it's looking really kind of creepy there. Got some nature sounds in the background, a little bit of rumble of thunder. And hold on here. Situated. You know what? I might be better off without it. It's going to continue to look like some creature that only comes out at night, which I kind of do. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And by the way, do not put good-natured in front of your personal safety. If you start hearing warnings, if you're local here in St. Charles and you start hearing sirens or something, please go to a place of safety. Like I said, I'm here in my car. I'm surrounded by rubber, so I think I'll be okay. And I've got a cool view of anything that's incoming. So with that, let's go ahead and get started here. I'll get our screen share going, and we'll see what's happening in the world of good nature. Let's start. Okay, with that, I hate to do this to you, but we're gonna have another helping of lizards one more time. This was last week's column, and if you've been tuning in regularly, you know that we have been talking about the non-native species of lizards that are showing up in this area through the tropical plant trade as well as the pet trade. The little guy pictured here is the current lizard resident here at Casa Otto. That is the brown anole that showed up in Laura McKenzie's tropical plants a few weeks ago. Still doing well. He's actually started another shed. He or she, I should add, has started another shed. The skin on the back is peeling off. He's eating fruit flies right and left. I hope to this week diversify the lizard's diet a little bit more and get him outside some so we can start getting those UV rays, which are so essential to lizard growth. So I'm not going to talk too much about these because, like I said, we've talked about lizards quite a bit, but I did want to share with you some interesting Facebook comments that I was going to print out, but they disappeared. It could just be my own lack of knowledge of how Facebook works. It could be that the commenter deleted them. But the gist of what he said was that he's a fisherman and that he's been seeing lizards in Kane County for over 30 years. Now, what we have here is a Google map showing South Elgin. To the left over here, which would be to the west, is the Fox River. We've got the downtown, the village area of South Elgin here in the middle. And then over here on the right, we have the landfill. Now, this gentleman said that he fishes some ponds near the landfill, and he sees these little lizards every year. When I read his first comment, to be honest, I thought he was talking about salamanders. But then he said they're really quick. And if there's one thing salamanders aren't, it's quick. So I'm pretty sure he was talking about a type of lizard. I couldn't think of any other little animals that could be mistaken for lizards. Snakes are pretty distinctive. Most mammals have fur. They don't look much like birds. Birds are covered with feathers. So I think he probably was seeing lizards. And since we don't have thing native to Kane County or nothing that's been recorded anyway. I'm thinking it might be something that's been introduced. Now, the gentleman did in another comment say that the heat from decomposition at the landfill might be causing there to be some little, he didn't use the word microclimate, but I think maybe that's what he's saying, that maybe there's some pockets over here where these lizards are able to overwinter. It's certainly something worth checking out, and I am going to try and get up there and poke around as best I can. I don't know. I know the landfill, the old landfill there has a lot of fencing around it, but I wanted to kind of get a sense of what there might be there, and I'll go check it out. Now, in addition to the brown anoles, there's also the Mediterranean house geckos that are in this area. And I'm curious if there are indeed lizards in that area, which species they are. So I'm going to see what I can do to check that out. No promises that it's going to happen this week or next week, but it is on my list of things to do this summer and fall. And if I find lizards in South Elgin, I'll be sure and let you know. So let's move along. You guys got to hear this. I love getting emails. I love getting voicemails. You never know what's going to come along the nature pike. And I thought you'd get a kick out of this one. Let's take a listen here.
Hi, my name is Kevin. We'll leave it at that for right now. I think you should call me back if you're interested in these shrews. I'll tell you why. I was changing the time. I have to change a water pump in my car. And on top of my pistons, inside the engine, is a whole litter, huge numbers of them living inside my engine. I just found them this morning. I looked them up online, and I had a friend of mine look them up online. And they're the shrews from here in Arizona. Call me back if you're interested.
Hold on. Kevin was about to give his number, so I wanted to make sure we cut him off. But I actually called Kevin back. He called on Sunday morning, and I called him back to see just what it was that he was talking about. And he swears that his engine in his car, which is not running at the moment, but it has been overtaken by shrews. The friend that he consulted on this, now Kevin is in Tucson, Arizona. The friend he consulted was in Ohio, but through the magic of Google, they were able to match up the images of what Kevin had taken. He does have some video on his cell phone, but sending the video wasn't possible. So but what he described right down to the red color of the teeth does indeed sound like shrews. I didn't know what to make of it, other than this has got to be the one and only time that I will get a voicemail, that any of us will have a chance to hear a voicemail about a shrew-infested automobile engine. I also didn't really know what to tell Kevin, because shrews, we oftentimes will get rodents in automobiles, especially if we don't drive them often. I know a lot of the Park District vehicles in the wintertime, they're kind of a refuge for a lot of mice that make nests in the ventilation system and the heater. A lot of times when we do get in the van and we turn the heat on, a mouse nest, little bits and pieces blow out on us. I've had a mouse one time break into my car here at home. I had stored some birdseed that contained peanuts, and I think the smell was irresistible, and the mice chewed in and did a little bit of damage that I had to have repaired. But shrews are insectivores. They don't really chew to gain access into things. And as Kevin said, these animals were living in the pistons in his engine. He said how each piston is separate, and there were different nests. He said that one he counted 12 little shrews. He said there was a mama and 12 babies. I don't know. He also said he called a radio station, KBOA in Tucson, to see if anybody would come out and take a look at it. But he didn't get any takers on that. he said if they would fix his car, he would let them look at his shrews. Well, that was a mistake because they said they do not pay for news. But anyway, Kevin in Tucson has a shrew infestation. If I can get more information on this, if I can get some of that video from him, I definitely will, and I'll share that with you. But I thought that definitely was deserving of the award for best voicemail of the week, if not the month, or maybe even the year. Now, this little video segment goes back a couple of weeks to when I was walking home from Good Natured World headquarters. You can see the glowing light there towards the center of the image. And let's just take a look at it here and count the zaps. 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. In a video that lasts a little under 30 seconds, at least 10 bugs died. And as I crept closer, and by the way, this was not at my house or anywhere near my house, so I was doing a little bit of trespassing, but I was just so annoyed. Bug zappers have been around for a long time. In fact, as a kid, I remember there was a Cock Robin fast food restaurant in downtown Wheaton, and they had a long UV tube, and the bugs would fall underneath it. I was kind of morbidly fascinated by all the dead bugs there. Then I don't recall seeing a lot of mosquitoes, which I think is the main target species for these lights. As it turns out, they are really not good at hitting that target. I found a really helpful article put out by the New York Times, and they noted that the UV light attracts insects to the center of the device, where they're then electrocuted by 2 metal rods. At a University of Delaware lab, they tracked 6 residential bug zappers for 10 weeks. Almost 14,000 insects were killed, and only 31, or less than 1/4%, were biting flies, which includes mosquitoes. At Notre Dame, they conducted 2 studies, and they found that mosquitoes were significantly less than 10% of the daily catch over an entire season. In one location, it was 4%, and the other it was a little over 6%. But again, these things are zapping bugs, and I know some people are like, well, you know, the only good bug is a dead bug, but there are so many helpful species that these bug zappers are taking out. Out at Kansas State, this was kind of interesting. The plot thickens when these researchers discovered that when flies and other insects known to carry a disease load, whether it's bacteria or virus, when they hit those electrodes and they get zapped, the little particles of disease can be sprayed away, and while the bug is vaporized, the disease remains. So thinking back to the Cock Robin in downtown Wheaton, as it's zapping those bugs, it's probably was spraying germs all over the food of the picnic table that was down below it. So I've never, you know, really understood why people would like to sit and hear that crackling, knowing that bugs were dying. And I actually was kind of thinking that maybe bug zappers were becoming a thing of the past. A lot of these studies date back 10, 15, 20 years. And I thought, well, you know, it's probably because bug zappers aren't really that popular anymore. Well, then I went to Costco the other day. Oh, by the way, that's where this these data that we just cited came from. This is a publication put out by the New York Times called Wirecutter, where they kind of do a deep drill on different topics. This was from 2019. You can look it up, or I can send you the link if you're interested. But I was at Costco, and what do I find but bug zappers? They had a large display just as you walked in. I took some pictures because I'm kind of toying with the idea of emailing the Costco corporate folks, asking them, because I know they make kind of a big deal about their sustainability practices. And if there's anything that's not sustainable, it's these non-specific bug killing things, whether it's, broad spectrum pesticide or in this case, these Dynatraps, which kill bugs 3 ways. They create a UV light, which attracts the bugs. There is an additional attractant of CO2 that draws them in. And then there is a fan that sucks them in and kills them. Or they dehydrate and die, usually in less than 24 hours. So I wasn't real happy to see this. It also comes with spare bulbs. Also wasn't too happy about that. When I went to their website, I saw that they did have lots of articles, and I thought, well, maybe they're linking to studies that cite the benefits of this sort of bug killing mechanism. And it didn't. It was kind of more tooting their own horn about the many benefits of the products that this company produces, which, by the way, include the Taro ant traps, Victor mouse traps. They have a heart, the so-called humane traps, and of course, what we see here, the Dynatrap. So I don't know, I have a feeling we probably all have a similar attitude towards these things, but it did surprise me that they are still for sale and in Costco of all places. So now we're going to move along and we're going to take a look at what's happening in our neighborhoods. I took this photo, I believe it was Saturday morning. It's not too clear. I was kind of playing around with my cell phone and my binoculars, but this was happening next door at Mike and Audrey's and their silver maple in the backyard. There was a young red-tailed hawk and it was having a meal. I thought this was really interesting because it didn't really seem too perturbed at my presence or the dog's presence. We were out playing Frisbee as we do every morning. And it was chomping away on something that it was holding in its talons. It looked sort of like fur that was falling from this branch. But the curious thing, and I was hoping it showed up here in this picture, but it really doesn't. The whole time the hawk was feeding, on the small branch behind it, there was a male house finch watching. And I was wondering if there's any relationship between house finches and red-tailed hawks. I'm not aware of any. If you've ever heard of one, please pipe up, put something in the chat or send me an email. I didn't think those two species really interacted. The thought did occur to me that maybe this young red-tailed hawk had captured Mrs. House Finch, although it did look to be fur, not feathers, that were falling from the branch. Anyway, the young of the year redtails are leaving their nests and they are making their way in the world. Some of them are still getting some handouts from mom and dad. You might hear some protesting, that very characteristic kind of a whistly scream or a screamy whistle that the redtails make in the sky. The young are protesting sometimes when they're hungry and they're not being fed or not being fed enough and they're being forced to hunt on their own. A little better image of the current situation goes credit to Bill and Kathy for sharing this photo. This was in the backyard and you can see here, this is a immature red-tailed hawk too. And we can tell it's immature by the lack of a red tail. It is, however, it's adult size. In fact, they might get actually a little bit smaller. When they first fledge, they're well fed and they are of a considerable size. Then they have to start hunting on their own. And sometimes they lose a little bit of weight, but a bird, and this is across the board, whether it's a songbird, a raptor, a waterfowl, they will grow to an adult size very quickly. In the case of the red-tailed hawk, this is courtesy of All About Birds. They are somewhere in between the size of a crow and a goose. The females, as is true of our birds of prey, are larger than our males. They are about 26, 27 inches in length and with a pretty considerable wingspan. Notice they don't weigh a whole lot. 51 ounces is the top weight for the larger sex, the female. That's what is that? That's a little over 3 pounds. So not a lot of bulk to these guys because they're birds. They have to be able to fly, but they attain adult size. The adult maturity, the wisdom that comes with age, that doesn't, just like with humans, it takes a while to for the brain to mature, to get that smart, to get that wisdom. So red-tailed hawks is true of most of our birds of prey. In fact, I think it's a widely touted figure for wildlife in general. About half of the young of the year do not make it into their second year. Various things get them, whether it's injury or disease. As we get into the harsher weather months in the wintertime, starvation can become an issue. So it's the hardiest of the hardy that survive and stick around to carry on the species a year or two down the road. But they do grow up very, very fast, size-wise, just not brain-wise. Now, this was an interesting email. This was another follow-up to the red-headed woodpecker story that we've been kicking around from time to time over the last few weeks. And we talked about how there was a textbook that mentioned that red-headed woodpeckers were vulnerable to road mortality. They were getting hit by cars. And this letter comes from a gentleman. He says that a recent red-headed woodpecker article was interesting, but in the future, we might want to talk about the impact of gray squirrels. So this was something we haven't talked about. A dozen years ago, I served on the federal jury duty downtown. One of my fellow jurors was the former director of the birdhouse of Brookfield Zoo. He said that redheads were in sharp decline because as fast as they bore nests, the gray squirrels take them over. Consequently, red-headed woodpeckers are having trouble nesting. I saw this demonstrated 2 years in a row in a big hollow in my neighbor's yard. Each spring, a pair of flickers would set up a house in a woodpecker hole and live there about 2 weeks, and the gray squirrels would kick them out and take over. Perhaps the gray squirrels need to be exposed as threats to the redheads. This fellow also mentions that article that we had talked about that was in the State Natural History Survey's collection, looking at different families of birds, including the woodpecker family, and specifically what happens to red-headed woodpeckers. That's where they cited the research about them getting hit by cars. This fellow says that he frequently would see red-headed woodpeckers on telephone poles near Stockton, Illinois, where he used to go hunting. A senior bird authority at the Field Museum felt that cars may have been more of a threat in the 1940s because at that time there was more brush closer to the roadside, and now roadside brush is cleared back past the telephone poles. So just a little bit more food for thought on a topic that seems to be recurring from time to time. I know they're still kind of rare around here. I haven't seen one since spring, but maybe they are figuring out how they can adapt to these varying threats like gray squirrels and telephone poles. So this is an email that I also got this week. This is actually from a receptionist at the Baker Center. This is from Connie. She said that she found this on her house and she thinks it's a leaf bug. Well, if we look a little more closely at it, we can identify it as a type of katydid. And we can also identify that it is a female katydid because it's got this little structure at the tip of the abdomen. That's the ovipositor, which is actually kind of a curved shape. It's hard to tell from this angle. Now, I have to say I have not brushed up on all of my katydid identification because we don't just have the true katydids, which, by the way, the males make a sound like this, and they are in full voice these days. But we also have meadow katydids, bush katydids, We can tell a katydid from a grasshopper, one by the very leaf-like character of the wings, and we can also tell the difference by these very long antennae. But they're out and about. When you're not going to see them unless you're very, very lucky, because their camouflage is so exquisite. They look so much like a leaf. But if they fall down, as this one happened to, and land on some siding, that camouflage doesn't work so well. So keep your eyes open for these katydids. Now, I got a little curious, as I often do, about the etymology of the name katydid. I heard, and in fact, in this paragraph, they mention the legend of the katydid. Lang Elliott, he has a wonderful website. I believe it's called Songs of Insects. And they relate on that, oh yeah, the Songs of Insects, which is also the name of their book. They talk about the story of a woman named Katy who was scorned by her gentleman caller, who ended up marrying someone else. And when the new couple was found mysteriously poisoned, it was the katydids who bore witness and continue to say her name to this day. But I thought this was interesting. John Bartram, the explorer of the American Southeast, back in the Ben Franklin days, called this insect the Katydids, which talks about catechism, the instruction by word of mouth, which in turn comes from a Greek word meaning to resound or to din in one's ears, which these guys certainly do on warm summer nights. I included this because, one, it's an interesting story, and two, this is a fabulous website. The bug lady up at the field station at UW Milwaukee, she has a wonderful way with words, and I really enjoy reading her take on the many, many insects that she finds up in the wilds of southeastern Wisconsin. But if you haven't had a chance to check out the bug lady, you can just type her name into your search engine, or I believe she writes, let's see, is it bug of the week, bug of the month, or just look up bug lady. And I guarantee you will enjoy her take on the various insects that she runs across up there in Wisconsin. Now, last Saturday, so was that 3-4 days ago, we conducted the Rusty Rodeo, which I had promoted a couple of times here on the Good Natured Hour. I thought it would be interesting for you guys to get a little recap on. We're still actually debriefing ourselves on how the program went. In Parks and Recreation, especially on the recreation side, programs are often judged by how many people came. And if that's the only measure that we used to gauge the success of this program, well, it was a hands down success. We had over 100 people come to Fearson Creek Park on Saturday morning. In fact, they were lining up starting at 10:30 for an event that started at 11 to help us catch as many of the introduced and invasive rusty crayfish there in the park. So again, if we just look at the numbers, it was a fabulous event. Like this was kind of fun. This kid, I remember when we hosted his, I think it was his 8th birthday at Hickory Knolls. He's 15 now. This has happened to me 3 or 4 times in the last year, where we'll be holding an event and I'll hear a deep voice go, "Hi, Miss Pam." And it'll be some little guy who's no longer little. They're now big guys. They're in high school. Some are actually in college, and they still come out to our nature events. So I thought that was kind of cool. Bobby was out in the stream. He was actually focusing more on the different types of fish. He caught some darters, which was a good sign of the water quality there, and a mad tom, which is a type of small fish that looks kind of like a catfish. Anyway, it was just kind of neat to see how many people wanted to come out. It was like a creek day, like we have in nature camp, only for grown-ups. This picture came, this was delivered today from a woman who took this, the perspective on this is from the bridge on Route 31, looking down into the creek. from above. I thought that was kind of a neat shot. So, you know, from a recreation perspective, we had a lot of people come out, a lot of people had fun, and that's all good. Now, the impact on the creek, that's another story. We did succeed in catching over 1,800 rusty crayfish. I was actually a little taken aback by how many rusty crayfish. And you can see the way you identify a rusty is by the reddish dot on their carapace. You can see the rusty dot on this one. You can see the rusty dot at the one that's down just kind of to the right of center, the lower part of the screen. Every single crayfish we pulled out of there was a rusty, which for Fearsome Creek, which is a pretty high quality stream, they have that number of an introduced and invasive species of crayfish. And plus the lack of natives there, it was really kind of made me, I don't know, just a little sad. Here's one of the contenders. We did give some prizes on Saturday. We had a prize for the largest crayfish, which measured just a little bit over 4 inches. That's not including those large claws. If you throw the claws in, that you'd probably add close to 2 inches to the length. So there were some pretty good sized rusty crayfish that were pulled out. This little girl was hilarious too. She had no fear. She kept putting her fingers. This was like this, it's kind of like something from the Addams Family, this roiling bucket of muddy water filled with creatures with claws. But anyway, she only got nipped once and she was upset. Not that she got nipped, but because she dropped it and she couldn't find it again. Anyway, so the largest crayfish was a little over 4 inches. The smallest crayfish was about 15 millimeters, so about 1.5 centimeters in length. Probably recently had left the protective care of its mother's abdomen. I do kind of worry about the impact on the creek, and I'm glad this is an annual or maybe even a one-time only event. We may move this event next year to another stretch of Fearsome that's not in Fearsome Creek Park. We may go up farther north in the watershed too, maybe into Otter Creek, Brewster Creek, somewhere where we're not being so impactful. That number of people in a stream does cause some damage. There's rocks that are being turned over, and I'm betting they weren't all placed back neatly where they were found. There's a lot of other things living in the creek besides the rusty crayfish, a lot of macroinvertebrates. We did find things like dragonfly nymphs that we returned to the water. Probably the coolest find of the day was this thing here. This is a fluted shell, the type of freshwater mussel. My friend Jessie was in attendance on Saturday, and she actually does the freshwater mussel propagation over at in DuPage County at the Urban Stream Research Center. Fluted shell was a species that she's been trying to find a living population of because there's some remediation work that's being done further up in the watershed in Tyler Creek. The way these laws work, Jessie has access to all different types of freshwater mussels. If you could just go around the state and pick up whatever kind she was looking for, that'd make her job pretty easy. But state laws, conservation laws dictate that to propagate and introduce a species into a watershed, it has to be grown from stock from that watershed. So she'd been looking specifically for Fox River watershed fluted shells, and she was lucky enough to find one on Saturday. Now this one did have a little bit of damage on one end. She is going to go back out to the stream to see if she can find more. She thinks if there's one healthy one, that there's probably more. And she was thankful to find, kind of is making her job easier because now she knows where she can go and look for them there in Fearsome Creek. So with that, we're going to wind it up. The lightning has calmed down a little bit, but I want you all to be safe. I'm also kind of fighting quite a few mosquitoes here in the garage at Casa Otto. So just give you a quick heads up as to what we'll be looking at next week. We've got barn swallows in the lineup. We're going to go back to spiders, which we avoided this week. We're going to talk about fishing spiders, which will be creating their nursery webs very, very soon. Got some cool fungus, and I'm hoping that this rain is going to prompt even more. And of course, reader emails and voicemails. Who knows what else will be happening in the coming week. With that, I will turn it over to you. Looks like we've got a couple of chats here, and I'll give you my weird glowing visage as we check out those notes. Valerie noted that people have said that the sound of insects being electrocuted is satisfying. Oh, yeah, I don't know. And, you know, I know that sound. It's a very distinctive sound. And I go back to Cock Robin and downtown Wheaton and the big bar insect light that was above the picnic table there. I just, every time I see it now, incidentally, the bug light that I videotaped, those people moved like the next week. I don't know if they thought this neighborhood's creepy. There's people lurking in our yard at night, taking pictures of our bug zapper, or if maybe their lease was up. I don't know, but the bug light, as well as the people that owned it, have moved on. Diane asked a great question. Diane attended on Saturday with her grandson, Marty, and did their some excellent work in catching rusty crayfish. She wanted to know, did we capture any, or did we find any queen snakes? We did not, Diane. And I am thinking, did we make things easier now? Because I know we didn't catch all the crayfish. The water levels may rise a little bit with this rain that we're having, but I wonder if they'll be out there hunting now that, you know, things have quieted down, or if they're just going to stay the heck away for a while, maybe move over to Fearsome Creek Fen. I did notice as we were counting the crayfish afterwards, and I was checking the carapace to see if there's any red dots on any of them, there was a really distinct difference in the feel of a freshly molted crayfish, which is what the queen snakes eat, versus the ones where their exoskeletons have hardened up. The color, I was surprised, the color is about the same. You know, a lot of times when insects will molt and shed their outer covering, their exoskeleton, they're light in color. But the crayfish, they were the same color, but they were just kind of soft and kind of slimy, which now has me wondering, how is it? It must be maybe a smell, an odor that the queen snake picks up on. It's not a sight thing, but so often as it goes, you learn one thing and all of a sudden then you find you got 10 or 20 more questions about it. But no, we did not find any queen snakes on Saturday. Greg and Kelly, appreciate you guys hanging in there too. Yeah, I don't know. Downtown, it was kind of weird. You know, Potawatomi, I was there for a board meeting and we lost power. But the internet was still on. So I thought, well, I'll just continue with my plan to do Good Natured from the community center. I did nix the plan to do it from the veranda out in the native plant garden. I wised up there when I saw the lightning and the size of the raindrops that were coming down. But when the internet went out, I dashed over to Good Natured World headquarters. It was all black there. So then I just skedaddled home and hanging out here in the tailgate of the station wagon. Anyway, appreciate you all hanging out tonight. Does anybody have any questions, comments, observations, advice for Kevin and his shrews? I got his phone number. I could pass that along. Glad you had fun, Diane, and thank you so much for your hard work on Saturday. Now, just a quick reminder, today is August 10th, which means next Tuesday is August 17th, and that is a week off from Good Natured. I hope if you're local and you want to go and hear Carl Strang talk about the singing insects of Kane County, that you'll sign up for that program at kaneforest.com. If you're not local, well, I'll miss you next week, but we'll be back in the saddle here on Tuesday, August 24th. Everybody have a great rest of your night. Be safe if you're headed out,
Thank you.
Down for now. Great to see you
Good night.
here. Good night.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks, Pam.